to the Community and Equalities Scrutiny Committee on this December afternoon. Thanks to everyone who's joined us. Thanks also to those who are following this on whatever platform we've managed to construct for you to watch it on. Apologies to those of you who can't join us because of technical problems, but we're trying to sort those out, as I understand it. And welcome also to guests who I will introduce as we get to those items. So, just to begin, have we any urgent business, Rachel?
None, Chair.
Any appeals?
None, Chair.
Are there any interests that members wish to declare? I'll take silence as a no. On to item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting we held on the 5th of November. Are there any matters, are there any points of accuracy, first of all, on those minutes that anyone wants to correct? Are there any matters arising from those minutes that don't appear elsewhere on the agenda? I should just say, if you want to speak, there are several ways of doing it. There are putting your hand up, literally putting your hand up. I don't think on this system we can raise a hand, can we all? That's on meetings and Teams, isn't it? You could put a note in the chat, which I'll follow. Or you can, failing all that, you just start talking and I'll decide whether or not you can continue. So basically, if I miss you, just put something in the chat. I'll put it in the chat to Rachel. I'll keep an eye on that as well. Follow me. So, are there any matters arising from those minutes that don't appear elsewhere on the agenda? I suppose the one I would just want to pick up on, and perhaps Councillor Rahman may well have more information on this, is the rearranged meeting to discuss the Peterloo. The last meeting to request was postponed, and that request was agreed to, and it has been postponed. I think I may well have seen an update from Dave Carty on that, but I can't remember if it's been finalised the date. Councillor Rahman, can you enlighten us?
Thank you, Chair. We have taken into consideration committee's recommendations to postpone and give us a bit more lead up time to organising the event and making sure that the event is the meeting is fully accessible online, and therefore it's going to be in the new year. Date hasn't been finalised, but we've got plenty of time working with our equalities team in the council to make sure that that meeting is fully accessible to everyone that wishes to participate.
Thanks. Good. Then we'll watch that space. I think it is. We don't need to overegg the pudding, but I think it is important to do it right rather than to do it quickly. And I think that's what we're trying to do. So that takes, unless there's anyone else got any other comments, I've not seen any. Thank you. I'll take us on to item 5. We've got 3 substantive items today, and this is one of them. We've got the work programme item at the end, but 3 substantive items which are on this one that's just about to come up on the age-friendly recovery, and we've got the digital exclusion, and then we've got the standing COVID-19 update. As are assuming we've read these reports, and therefore we don't require long introductions or step-by-step through the report. However, on item with Ian Murray, the Age Friendly Manchester Older People's Board, And also we've got two elected members who've done a lot of work around this, Councillor Watson and Councillor Cooley. So we welcome those members and friends, and I would therefore ask whoever's leading this to arrange for people to introduce themselves and to say what their role is and to say what they come to say, and we'll allow as much time for that at the beginning as you like, and then we'll move into questions and discussion. So I don't know who's leading us on this.
I will. Philip Bradley.
Philip?
Yes.
Hello, Philip.
I'll start, shall I? I'm very well, John, thank you. Not seen you for a while.
Good, I'm glad
very
to
well,
hear
thank you.
No.
Let me shall I just introduce you the people that are here today to talk through the report?
Please.
And then I'll very, very briefly introduce the report and give more space for people to talk, really.
Yeah.
So with me is Elaine Akbar, who's the chair of the Older People's Board, and Marie Greenhouse, who's the vice chair of the Age-Friendly Manchester Older People's Board, and accompanied with Councillor Mary Watson and Councillor Sue Cooley, who are members of the board, and Mary's also the lead member for Ageing in the City, Age-Friendly in the City. It's worthwhile pointing out that 4 people here are also form the editorial group that helped craft the substance of the report that was used to present the scrutiny report here today. And I think you'll probably want to hear more from these 4 people rather than me. So I'll be just very, very brief to introduce the purpose of the report and give space to my friends on the board to just talk a bit more about each of the 5 key themes. This came out, the report came out of a need at the board that began to meet virtually after a period of lockdown and resetting its priorities as a consequence to the pandemic. The report came out because board members were very clear about the experiences they were facing in Manchester at that time, and they were very different experiences, not necessarily positive experiences, but quite quickly articulated what they felt were important issues that needed addressing. Resulted in a helpful meeting with the leader and the chief exec, and a report came from that meeting, and this is what the basis of this is really. There are 5 key themes, which we'll just very briefly introduce and talk about what the ideas are around those 5 key themes and how we want to make progress on them. But the key message, I guess, in the report is that actually older people in Manchester have a strong history of having a voice that's heard and being part of the solution in the city. And this report is really a proposal about how older people can play a part in both the recovery when it arrives and benefit from that recovery. The proposals in the report were, it's worthwhile pointing out, were developed with the input of a range of senior officers in the council. So it's not just a case of the board and the Age-Friendly Manchester team writing a report internally. It's definitely a collegiate collaborative approach to creating this. So the recommendations are broad ranging and owned by a range of different people. And it's worth noting, one of the proposals is to establish an executive group to work alongside the board to provide some executive input from across the city and from the system within the city. So Manchester City Council, MHCC, etc. And Bernie Enright has agreed to chair that group, and we'll be with the board looking to have that executive established in the new year. More important than other people speak. So Elaine, I think we were going to hand over to you to start the introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite to the scrutiny group. And as Philip has said, we're going to just briefly articulate our 5 themes that we have decided on. And I'll speak about ageism. As we know, COVID has exposed the deep-seated ageism. And ageism has a tremendous impact on the health and well-being of older residents. And it can lead to isolation and loneliness, and even to depression. The stereotypical images and the negative language of vulnerability and the benevolent patronage perpetuates negative attitudes. It's essential that a new way is woven using positive narratives to combat ageism. Going forward, everyone has a role to play. There needs to be honest and sustained conversations. Thank you. And now I think it's Mary.
Yes, I echo Elaine's thanks to the committee for inviting us all to come today. When we met first, back during lockdown, the first proper lockdown, it was amazing for the age-friendly Older People's Board to actually get together online. And it was even better when some of us managed to see each other in person, locally. Because that is one of the things I think that all older people would say to you that they have missed, is real people, being able to see people really. And that also, we have lost our voice. But when we met, we felt that the older people that had most lost their voice and perhaps never had one were the older people living in our care homes. And that we as a board needed to do something about that, because we had in fact never thought to include them in terms of how the board operated. So we have some clear recommendations for trying to make sure that those care homes in our neighbourhoods become part of our neighbourhoods, linked into our neighbourhoods, and able to take part in what is there on offer in their neighbourhoods. And we have some very clear recommendations in the report about how we could begin as a council to make this happen. It's already happening in other types of accommodation, because we are looking at it from the start for the extra care scheme, which is LGBT plus affirmative, that is going to be built in Whalley Range. And we are looking there at making sure that that facility is integrated within the community and feels part of the community locally. And that's how we would like all of our older people's accommodation of whatever type to be in the future. And now I will be passing on to Marie.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you, Mary and Elaine. So I'm going to be talking about neighbourhoods, and the neighbourhoods we grow up in, live, work and play and make social connections throughout our lives are a key influence on how we age. Neighbourhoods can impact on whether we age well or instead live long periods from mid to later life experiencing ill health, social isolation and poverty. Many older people have spent months in their homes with little or no opportunity to meet up with friends and connect with their neighbours. Local neighbourhood groups, for example, Good Neighbour groups, have been vital in keeping many older people connected, offering practical support and advice and linking into the excellent community response that Manchester set up. We know through our relationships with neighbour groups and community groups that many older people are confused and frustrated about the restrictions of COVID, and many, out of ignorance and fear, will stay in their homes even after the guidance says it's safe to venture outside. These older people will remain vulnerable and isolated for some time, requiring the continued support of their neighbourhood, of their local community-based groups. As a consequence, the importance of neighbourhoods has taken on an even greater relevance in the world of COVID. We have some very clear recommendations. Agree a set of age-friendly standards, very much like, So agree a set of age-friendly standards similar to those in place for libraries and parks to ensure that older people receive the same high levels of service as other groups. Provide the right information in the right format and in the right place in neighbourhoods to make sure that older people's voices are heard. To develop an investment strategy that seeks to safeguard levels of investment in existing neighbourhood groups, extending the freedom and the flexibilities attached to this so that groups can better respond to their local neighbourhood. This is quite an important one, as many groups will fold before the summer if we don't invest in them. Shape how Manchester's community response hub evolves to take into account the specific needs of older residents, and to develop an integrated approach across services. Thank you. I don't know who I'm handing over to. Phil.
Back to you, Philip.
I think it's Sue. No.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hi. I think it's me. I don't want to jump in queue.
Well, I say it's you, and I get.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, can I say that I think it's taken just over 22 years, I think, to get to a stage working around the older people's agenda where we actually have such an important report as this, that I think could change the way, potentially change the way that we look at ageing and older people across the city and more widely than that. But I want to talk about employment or lack of employment for people who are over 55. Lots of people have worked and started careers and do very well and find themselves, particularly now with the pandemic, out of work at age 55 or 50 plus. And quite rightly, across employment, we tend to look at employment for younger people and training for younger people. And I think we make a big mistake if we forget about the people age 50 or 55 plus who've got quite a lot of working experience and quite a lot of transferable skills, but tend to fail to find employment. And bear in mind as well that our working lives have been extended. We've been told now that we have to work to 68 or 70, and that's a long time to be working or to be out of work if you become unemployed in your 50s. I also think that there's and it has been tried in other places, there's a space for older people's apprenticeships. I think the report talks about this in more detail, and there are a set of recommendations, but basically what we're asking is that Manchester, as we have done in so many other fields, leads the way in this and starts to set the example and work with the people that we contract with and are associated with to encourage older people's opportunities for working. I won't say any more than that because I know we've got short of time in this slot, but we can talk about that later with the questions.
And Elaine, do you want to wrap up?
Yes. This is our last reset, Manchester reset, and we are very pleased that the board is involved in this process. Emerging from these turbulent times and with the apparent cuts, I do know that we will be more weakened. It is even more important to secure a wider participatory and an inclusive agenda, ensuring that the voice of older residents are captured in the engagement activities. And that is our last key point. And we are asking that these recommendations are noted and also taken to the executives. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Do you want me to just conclude? So just to, I think I want to echo what Sue said really, that this is a substantial set of proposals, but all achievable. There's some ambition in here, but of strong belief in our conversations with more older people in the city that these are the right things to do now to make some significant change. And just to come back to where we started, really, this comes from an equalities agenda, really. So it's more about how we address some of the barriers and issues that older people are facing in the city in a way that enable individuals to remain independent and empowered and benefit from what the city has.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks very much. Thanks for everybody's contribution. Just before I open it up to questions and comments, just a couple of things from me, really. One, I mean, first of all, I'd echo the comments I think that Marie made about good neighbours schemes. Certainly, without special pleading or special praise, Chorlton Good Neighbours has been invaluable to us throughout. I don't know what, I mean, most of the time I don't know what we do without them. But in the last 8 months, I genuinely don't know what, as councillors, we would have done without having them to guide us and rely on and help us and support the vulnerable. What happened there? Can you still hear me? Okay, good.
We missed some.
Yeah, I just dropped out. I was just praising Chorlton Good Neighbours, if I'm being honest, and saying what a fantastic job they've done over the period and how we wouldn't have been able to do without them. That's no. I know there are Good Neighbours schemes and there are similar schemes up and down the city, but the one that I'm most intimately involved in has been absolute rock throughout the last 7 or 8 months, and I genuinely don't know what we'd have done without them. The other thing to just note is a technical procedural point, which you can either switch your mics off or go and make a brew while I tell you. In terms of what we're doing with this report, we're noting it, and we will get onto some serious noting in a minute when I've finished. We are quite happy to give it our blessing and to pass it on to the executive with our best wishes and our comments. What we're not in a position to do is approve anything. It's an executive decision. This is a scrutiny committee, just for those of you who care about these things, which is largely Richard Lees, if we're being honest. So if Richard's listening, it's okay, mate, I'm on it, I've got the process under control. We're not approving it, we're certainly not spending any money, but I would be very surprised if we substantially disagree with any of the recommendations in this report and would want to, I'm sure, when we've had a discussion, to do, in effect, an approval of them. They meet our approval without us approving them. If you and now, can I just point out that I'm extremely pleased to see Councillor Rawson, however briefly, because he's been having some problems contacting. Oh, there he is. So I'm very pleased to see you, Dave. I'm glad you got it sorted. Can I open up then? Sorry, can I just open up? Of course you can. Why not? Sue, we've never had I've never been in any position in real life or online when you have butted in on me. So let's crack on there.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to say, Chair, is that you can't approve the report, but I think what scrutiny can do is strongly support the recommendations in the report.
And I'm sure. Thank you. I'm opening up for comments. Just bear with me while I look in the chat. I've got 2 questions from Rebecca. Is that right?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So Just wanted to firstly say thanks to Elaine, Mary, Marie and Sue for the report, and it's fantastic to see an organisation being headed up by 4 very strong Manchester women. I wanted to raise 2 comments about the report. One is about health inequalities and another was about care homes. So we know that people are living longer, but they're often living in poorer health, particularly in our wards that have got higher levels of deprivation. And what's quite shocking is the lack of government support around this. It was in the Conservative Party manifesto that they were going to increase healthy life expectancy by an extra 5 years by 2035, and we're yet to see any action on that. So I wanted to know what Manchester specifically is doing around bridging the healthy life expectancy gap, and also what we're doing to lobby the government to take action on those important manifesto commitments. The other point I wanted to raise was about care homes, which was in section 1.11 and 1.12. One thing that's really been highlighted was access to visitation and the impact that that's had on people's mental health and well-being and loneliness. There's been some absolutely appalling stories in the press about families that have been separated, people that haven't seen their loved ones. You know, at a time we've seen people that have been in separate care homes and their loved ones have passed before they've managed to see them. So I wanted to know, as we're moving towards a COVID recovery, what the City Council are doing with our own care homes and with private providers to make sure that visitations can be safe as we're moving into 2021. But thank you. Oh, and I also wanted to ask, on 7.13, there was a reference to say that baby boomers have seen a larger drop of earnings compared to younger people. I was just wondering which study that was from. Thanks.
Okay, before we take, I've got a couple of other people who want to ask questions. I'll just take that one because it's kind of 2 questions. Well, there were 2 questions. One, I think, about the care homes in particular, I think Councillor Craig wants to respond to that, and then I'll let whoever wants to respond to the other question.
Thanks, Chair. And I think it in the spirit of the paper, it will be important, I think, to get the representatives of age-friendly Manchester's views on this, because I know as the executive member that one of the hardest elements of this crisis, and there have been many, has been around how people in our care homes not just have a voice but don't get forgotten. And I think it's difficult for me to make the point very clearly without perhaps talking a little bit around some of the national policy problems on this. But I do think that they're worth restating. And I think whilst the response in Manchester hasn't been a perfect one in terms of doing everything that we would like to do to support people in care homes have their voice, I think we have done some very specific things that if the government had done nationally would have demonstrated, I think, care and respect for people living in care homes. The example I often use, and it's purely indicative, is in Manchester by the 16th of March, we'd taken a decision in all of our hospitals that anyone being discharged would have a COVID test. It still shocks me that this wasn't a national policy decision until the middle of May. And I think that in one simple fact probably sums up some of the problems that care homes have faced nationally as a result of public policy. In relation to the question specifically around visiting, I've shared and heard from a lot of families in the city who have been struggling in not seeing their loved ones face to face. Some of the homes have used technology. Some of the homes have allowed window visiting and tried to facilitate that how they can. But obviously nothing takes the place of someone coming face to face and sitting with their loved one or holding their hand. The introduction of lateral flow testing, I apologise if this is a bit long-winded, but I think for something so serious it's important to get across a lot of the facts on this. Lateral flow testing is this new test, essentially using the same method. So you pop the stick down your throat and up your nose, but it gives you a result within 30 minutes rather than having to go away to the lab and come back within a few days. The one that goes to the lab is called the PCR test. So the lateral flow test does offer an opportunity to allow visiting. But across the country, and we've seen cities like Sheffield publicly state their concerns. Rochdale issued a press release this morning, and Bolton did something yesterday around some of the concerns of just using this in isolation. Because the problem with lateral flow testing is that it also, when used by experts, is round about 76% accurate. When used by people who aren't experts, that accuracy drops to about 50%. And some of the evidence coming out of Liverpool shows that as little in some cases as 5 out of 10 positive people were picked up. So my view, and I know we've had robust discussion about this repeatedly, my view is that this in and of itself and alone isn't sufficient, I think, in a line of safety to some of the people that we know in the city would face the most risk if they caught COVID. So we're coming up with a slightly different plan, and that will involve visitors taking one of the tests that goes away to the lab 4 days before visiting, and then on the day they want to visit, having one of these lateral flow tests. We're in the process of getting that lined up, agreeing it across GM, and over the next few days, care homes will be written out to. There'll be a webinar on Monday explaining it, and it's my hope that within the next fortnight, we can have a process in place that allows people to safely visit their loved ones. Sorry if that's a bit long-winded. I think I've just been so frustrated by government ministers just going on telly and saying things really glibly, and I think it's important that we get across the very measured response. Really want people to see their loved ones, but really want them to do it safely.
Thanks, Bev. I've got quite a few people who want to ask questions. Just the other part of Rebecca's question.
The point about healthy life expectancy, shall I just pick that one up briefly? Completely agree with you. It's something that at the local level, within the resources we've got, we're trying to do things differently. So 2 things are in play here. One is within the Greater Manchester network, we're part of the Ageing Hub within Greater Manchester. We've helped develop a thing called the Ageing in Place programme, which specifically does that about how do we support, what are the policy and system and service reform approaches to, at a neighbourhood level, that we need to put in place to help people age well, or support them to age better, or to help support people with long-term conditions in home. That got somewhat interrupted by the events this year, but is built on a more concrete foundation that we're putting in place with the MLCO, where the Age Friendly Manchester programme, the board and MLCO are looking at how we better integrate an age-friendly stroke ageing well priority across all the neighbourhood plans in the city, which then acts as a tick and a reminder to people about what is it that we might need to do differently on this particular agenda. Because what we have is a population that is experiencing, in many circumstances, significant challenges and multiple long-term conditions, and we need to make sure that we're putting in place plans that both recognise that but come up with different ways of dealing with that. What we have already on the ground are things like Buzz. So if you think about the wellbeing service in Manchester, Buzz network, we as a group, the board in particular, played a part in redesigning that service so it had a dedicated age-friendly dimension. So there's a whole team of people in the Buzz network now that are driving that age-friendly approach, which specifically wraps well-being in its broadest sense around the age-friendly agenda and has in consideration what might be the attractions and the way we need to go about things that are appealing and attractive and accessible. Mary, did you want to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to say to people that having a healthier old age depends on living slightly less unhealthily when you're younger, because the sins of past do come home to haunt you. Now
you tell me.
It's just worth remembering that this is what happens. And I hope that all of you do live to be as old as me.
Methuselah.
Well, yeah, but I think that it's worth stressing that a lot of the problems with health in later life start happening in what you might call the, I think they used to call it middle age, but younger. So just bear that in mind.
Thanks, Mary. Well, as somebody who hit 60 this year, we should send that memo out a bit earlier.
And just the point about 7.13 in the source. Unfortunately, I don't have it immediately to hand. I think it might be the Resolution Foundation, but I'll go back and confirm. And
okay, thank you. I've got a large number of people wishing to speak. I've got you, Sue. Can I take them in twos, please? And can I ask if the answers can be as brief as possible, because I really do have more people wanting to speak than not, which shows the importance of this issue. I've got Majid and then Becky, if you could come in. Majid first.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yep.
Brilliant. I welcome the recommendations of the plan, but I feel that as a priority has to be to undertake an age disparity report, as some of the issues that have arisen seem to be due to council policy. We really need to embed equalities at the heart of decision making, Chair.
Good point. I don't think you got much argument with that. Becky.
Thanks, Chair. So my question is about 6.9 about the voluntary sector. I was pleased to read about the work the council are doing with the voluntary sector to support older people, for example, with groups like assist groups and good neighbours groups. But I'd be interested to hear if the council are doing any work to support the older people who make up a large proportion of volunteers in the voluntary sector, for example, in places like food banks and community centres. Those older people who may have felt unable to take on those roles over the last sort of 9 months or so as a result of the pandemic, and who it would benefit them to get, socially benefit them to get involved in. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to respond to Becky? Sound wasn't that great, but...
Mary, did you want to?
I can start. I think that the community and voluntary sector, and I put community first, is extremely important, and the City Council does need to support activity at a grassroots level, because that is where, as you heard earlier, older people live in the neighbourhoods and don't often go that far away. And for some of us, this last year means that we haven't actually been further than 5 minutes from our own homes. And I said, but it's important that the communities out there that have shown they can be very supportive are enabled to carry on being supportive. I also take your point about younger older people having been the mainstay of many community and voluntary activities. And we want to be again. We definitely want to be again, because it's important that older people can contribute, and that is definitely part of how we see things going forward. Hope that helps.
Mary. I'm going to move us on. I want to take questions now from Councillor Russell, Sarah, and I've got June. So those two next, please.
Thank you very much. And I think I should give a big thank you to Marie Greenhay with Ensure Older Neighbours at this moment. I couldn't let that pass when obviously Chiltern Good Neighbours had been flagged. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done for us as well. But what I wanted to ask about was paragraph 7.7 of the report, which refers to us having measured the age friendliness in employment of the council through measures provided by the Centre for Ageing Better, and for self-assess and to outline areas of improvement. The first draft, and it was only the first draft, that I came to resources of the equality strategy recently, although it did refer to ageing and did note that our workforce has relatively more older people in it, and didn't really talk about much beyond that, apart from saying it would be good that if we created more jobs for younger people. I think you make some really valid points in here about not treating older people as just filling time till they retire. So I wanted to ask Councillor Akbar whether that's been taken on board into the next iteration of that policy, and whether it could be if it hasn't been already. Thank you.
June, do you want to ask your question? Then I'll come to Rabnawaz for his response to that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a number of questions, but it's mainly on employment and also how a lot of older people have been furloughed and then laid off at the end of it. So there's a high proportion of people. So I'd like to see what the figures would be in future in relation to that. What more is it's about the work clubs and North Manchester employment pilot. I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because that was done pre-COVID, and obviously things changed. But I wanted to make a comment, which was over 18 years ago, I became a councillor in Miles Platt in Newton Heath, and one of the things which was really lacking was older people's facilities and to be able to embed that into the community. And I'm really, really pleased that we've got the Heathfield Centre in Newton Heath, which has been really, really great and fantastic, supporting older people, not just in employment, but also in activities and training and learning. But my concern is that as people pre-1964 or 1966, people from that age bracket did not have computers at school. So that technology wasn't arisen. And so they've gone through their educational methods, not using IT. And so IT is now moving forward. Everybody has to have the digital. And I note, like at 7.19, there is digital inclusion. But I'd like to also know a little bit more about how older people can actually access that so that they can gain employment. What training? I understand it's going in libraries, but is there anything else out there? Is there people who can, if somebody wants to learn about digital inclusion, how they can actually learn more about computer skills? And then also, because in North Manchester, North and East Manchester, most of the people worked in dirty industries, so their health-wise is absolutely appalling. And by dirty industries, I mean in machinists, engineering, down the pits, down the mines, and also a lot of working class people, did hard manual labour. So by the time you're 50, your body is absolutely tired. So I'm just concerned about that as well, about the health implications and how people have to work until they're 68 or even longer, and then their bodies won't be able to cope. So that's all of those, all in a nutshell, please.
Okay, can I I'm just checking one or two of the responses, just making sure I've got everyone. Yeah, just on the issue that June raised about digital inclusion, exclusion, we do have an item coming up next on that, so I'm going to let Angela respond to that really more fully when we get to that section, if that's all right, June. So can we just take any responses to Sarah and June's questions and comments? Rabnawaz, I think Sarah's question was largely directed at you.
Thanks, Chair. It was directed at me. I mean, I'll kind of try to answer it, because HROD is Councillor Bridges' kind of his portfolio. But yeah, is that better now? I think I was asked to start video. Yeah, as I was saying, I think Councillor Russell is referring to probably the workforce equality strategy, and I totally agree. I think we cannot incorporate some of the recommendations from the Centre for Ageing into that policy. We'll certainly have a chat with Councillor Bridges to see if we can do that. It's not about treating older staff as just kind of passing out time until they retire. I think certainly the State of the City report recently has highlighted that those in the 50 to 64-year-old are the ones that are least active in employment. And I think some of our social value kind of contracts, certainly the ones that have come past by me, I've made sure that contractors are looking at people in this age group proactively to make sure that we try to kind of help those people find employment. So yeah, take that point on board, Councillor Russell, and I'll have a discussion with Councillor Bridges to make sure that the workforce equality strategy reflects what you just said. Thank you.
And apart from the digital inclusion question, any comments on Councillor Hitchin?
Can I just add, first of all, to the equality strategy? So we've reached out to Deb Clark as well from Age Friendly Manchester, just to provide some further input and insight from our position on this, really, and she's accepted that invitation. So we'll be working on helping develop some further detail around that aligns closer to the recommendations. In terms of Councillor Hitchin's comment about North Manchester pilot, we were only I was only in a discussion with the guys that are leading this a couple of weeks ago about their ideas about how we can develop a socially distanced jobs fair. They're trying to think of different ways of engaging and reaching people in a safe way in current circumstances, because there are opportunities out there. There are employment opportunities, and so they've been able to engage and reach a whole range of different people virtually. So not necessarily digitally, but via phone and things like that. And they're quite eager that they continue that relationship going in a way that actually offers something rather than keeping in touch. And so they're currently thinking about how to do that safely. So the job fair idea is in the making amendment. So June, what we can do is make sure that you're briefed on that as it's developed.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got two people now to come in. Councillor Cooley first, and then Councillor Doswell.
Sorry, Chair. I'm sorry I keep interrupting. It's just that I can't type with my hand, so I have to do that.
It's all right. I got you.
I wanted to come in on employment for a minute, because we're focusing on paid employment, and that's quite right, and about making sure that people have a stable economic future up until retirement. But I think we mustn't ever forget at the same time that there are people who have not been in employment for most of their lives. And when they get to turn 50 or 55, their lives are even they're in an even more dire situation, I think, than those people who have worked and then find themselves unable to carry on working. And what I think we need to do there is make sure that the contributions that those people make, and because even people who are not in paid work do make contributions to family life, to community life, and in lots of other ways. And I think those contributions have to be valued and have to be recognised, because if you are over 50 and not in work, your self-esteem is on the floor. And all those contributions that people make to family and to community need to be recognised. Because I think we can talk sometimes in a bit of a disparaging way about people who are not in work. And lots of times it's because of ill health, it's because of all sorts of reasons. And we mustn't let that get lost in this discussion.
Thank you. Jade.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for this really interesting report. I think my point has been sort of partially addressed by Philip already in response to the other questions when he spoke about the neighbourhood kind of approach and the use of NHS buzz and things like that. But I wanted to put on record about the place or Fallowfield Library, which has been absolutely fantastic. They've got a Saturday morning project which is called Forever Young, and it's won awards. It's been an absolute lifeline for many of our elderly residents. So we meet bi-monthly with our neighbourhood team, the place.
Older residents, Jade, not elderly. Okay.
Sorry, Mary. Older. Sorry. Oh, where am I now? Sorry, but I'll use the correct term from now on. I do apologise, Mary. Yeah, so we meet with the neighbourhood team, the place, Be Well, our MLCO for Fallowfield, and a growing problem that's regularly arisen is mental health needs of the older population who've been shielding. We're working on a community response to this, but I was wondering if there was specific provision of targeted mental health support for those who are older and have had to isolate. And I just wanted to also say that I think poverty and inequality underpins a lot of the issues that are outlined in this report and the next report. So taking that into account, the level of inequality in our city is really important to address the issues. And yeah, I do apologise for the wrong use of parlance there, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
I've got
very important.
one chair, one meeting.
Okay.
I've got a number of people that want to speak, including you, Mary. I've got you on my list. I don't know if you want to come in on that specific issue, or do you want to come in after a couple of other people? What does that mean? No. Do you want to come in now? Okay. I've got you on the list. Okay. Do there any specific response to Jade's comments, question?
I think, yeah, the way you described that example there with Fallowfield Library is a brilliant one, isn't it? And we've got a number of those examples across the city. And I think part of what we're trying to say, hopefully, and crafted in the report really is we've got some really good stuff in this city. What we want to, at that kind of level, we want it to be more consistent. So more consistently resourced across each of the neighbourhoods. And there are various challenges there, aren't there? So we could talk for quite some time about the history around voluntary sector development in the city and why there's a concentration in some places greater than others. But over time, that's what we want to see is a more levelling up of that investment, and so that those examples you're talking about can be realised in any part of the city, because what that does is provides that real brilliant opportunity that Fallowfield residents have got in other parts of the city at that kind of same scale. So working with us, working with MLCO specifically, the kind of platforms for us to do that.
Okay, thanks very much. I need to just move us on and bring in, I've got Carmine and Mary next two. So Councillor Grimshaw first. He's definitely there, I can see him. Okay, we'll come back to Carmine. He's obviously having problems there. Mary.
Thank you. I'd rather that Elaine spoke because she was holding her hand up before and she's probably got a more measured approach.
Okay. Is that true, Elaine? You're more measured than Councillor Watson.
Not really. I just wanted to come and say something about employment. That I feel that apprenticeships should be offered to older people and meaningful apprenticeships. And also, they have to be, as you get older, there are comorbidities and they must be supported along the way. Otherwise, it's quick that they say because they're ill, they have to finish with their jobs. You know, so I'm very concerned that meaningful apprenticeships are offered to older people and not just bring them because they need a job. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Okay, I've got, have we got Carmine? Is Carmine online yet? He's there.
John, I'm here,
yes.
Yeah.
Right. Nice to see you.
It was more of a comment I wanted to make, and just going off the back of Elaine's last comment there, is that I've not seen much about education, especially adult education. And for me, if most people our age, my age, I'm 50 plus, I know when not so long, just before I became a councillor, I was looking to start doing something else, but couldn't get the support from education at the age I was. And I felt that it set me back because, you know, I would have been self-employed should I have taken this other course, what I wanted to do, but couldn't get no assistance in any way, especially financially. And that's why I ended up having to do, I did some night school, but that's all I could afford. I couldn't afford a full-time course. I'd just like to see a little bit more in the report around education for older people and how that steers them into perhaps more employment. As you know, that's what I'd like to see a little bit more of. Perhaps Philip could enlighten us on some of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to actually if you don't mind, Philip, I'm going to ask Angela just to come in and respond on that point on employment generally, but also I know she'll have a view on the education issue as well.
I can't, I'm afraid I can't stop my video. It says the host to stop my video, so I can only speak if that's all right. I don't know if somebody can
Andrew might turn your video back on if you're very good.
All right.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you. That's better. So just a general point, just to reassure Elaine. So over 50s employment and unemployment is a priority in terms of what we're doing around the work and skills strategy more broadly. And it was an issue we picked up immediately post-COVID. So in that steep rise in unemployment in April and May, the three groups that were most adversely affected were young people, over 50s, and residents from our BAME communities. And obviously people not young and old are mutually exclusive, but not the other kind of combinations. The unemployment in older people has kind of levelled off, so it hasn't increased at a kind of, so the young people's unemployment has continued to rise, and the sort of rise in claimant count for older people hasn't, and so it hasn't kind of continued, but it still is a key issue for us. And in terms of what Councillor Cooley described, we are, you know, there was a fairly deep dive done, wasn't there, last year on the position of over 50, the economic position of over 50s in the city, and it came to economy scrutiny rather than this one, because it is an important part of the economy of the city, and making sure that everybody's got an opportunity to make a contribution and to be able to sort of benefit from the economic opportunities in the city, and that still is. So we are conscious that there's some more immediate responses on the groups who've fallen out of unemployment now, but that's not at the expense of those who have been long-term unemployed, many with kind of health conditions, as kind of indicated by a number of the contributors today. So we are still focused on that. And the Greater Manchester Working Wild programme has been expanded by about £13 million to kind of extend its reach. So there is some work going on there. In terms of adult education, I think there is there's a long-term underinvestment in education for adults, or has been for the past decade or so. And one of the issues is beyond basic levels, so your first level 2, there hasn't been public funding for adults, and adults in this space is anybody over the age of 24. There are advanced learner loans, but people are reluctant to take those advanced learner loans unless you can kind of see the pathway through where you could kind of repay them. Having said that, the Manchester College has made very good use of advanced learner loans and got people to use them and back into kind of career pathways. However, the kind of announcements in September by the Prime Minister indicates that there is going to be funding for people to get to the equivalent of A-levels, and there's going to be more investment in adult education. So we would expect that proportionately to impact on the kind of over 50 age group as well as other age groups. In terms of the adult education service, and again, I guess this is where things do overlap, don't they, in terms of the agendas, but they only go one place, and adult education generally goes to economy. But the profile is strongest in the kind of 25 to 44-year-old age group, and there are fewer adults over that age kind of participating, but there are some. But you know, there is definitely more, I think, the adult education service can do to kind of attract in more people who are over the age of 50 and reconnect. And that's back to some of your kind of earlier points in terms of there need to be pathways through for people, from all age groups in the city, including over 50s. We were doing a pilot with Barclays prior to COVID on looking at the opportunities for people over the age of 50 to get apprenticeships with Barclays, and they were open to that. I have to say, I think apprenticeships, there are a couple of issues. Some is to do with how they're viewed, and they're certainly often viewed as something for young people in construction, and it's most basic. That isn't what they are at all, but it's often how they're viewed. And then the second issue is the kind of apprenticeship wage, and if you have commitments and financial commitments, how viable that is for people individually. So hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Angela. I'm going to have to move us along fairly quickly because we're coming up to the hour on this, which is quite easily probably in the top 3 longest we've ever spent on anything. You can while away your Christmas wondering what the other 2 were. I've got Veronica has been waiting very patiently, and then I know June and Sue want to make some comments, and then I know Paul wants to ask a question, and then we will draw a line under that if that's fine with people. So first of all, Veronica.
Thank you, Chair. Angela has answered my question. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And June wanted to comment.
Yeah, I think the report is really, really good. But what I would like to see from the back of this report is there's great things happening right across the city. But as councillors, we don't know what's happening in different parts of the city. And I think that's a lesson that we could all learn. Is it possible to be able to deliver some of the great things that's happening, like what Jade had actually mentioned, like what I'd mentioned in my ward, what you'd mentioned in yours, John? I just think it would be really great just to see what is out there and then share those best practices, please. Is that possible to actually do as well?
Okay, I'll let Philip. Can Philip just come back on that?
Of course, June. I mean, there's several ways to find out what's coming on. One of them, and I'd encourage you to sign up to the e-bulletin, June. It's monthly, and it promotes things that are happening. It's a kind of catchy, kind of informative piece. What we can do is we can use that as a platform of showcasing new and exciting or different things that are happening. That's probably the best way to do that. I'll send you very much.
John, can I just come back? Because it was for all members, not just for me. I'm on about all members because we've got new members on the council and they may not be aware of some of the great things that's happening. So I'm just wondering, can that be shared right across to all members, please?
Yes, of course. I think I'd encourage all members to. It wasn't directly just for you.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Yeah, all members, okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I come back? Can I come in on that one, Chair, with June?
Well, I've just got you lined up to speak, so.
Oh, well, okay. Well, June,
bear with me 1 second, Sue.
Sorry.
It's just that we need to draw this to a close, so I'm going to ask you to say what you've got to say, then ask Paul. So the both of you from the great state of Wythenshawe can finish off this session for us. So, Sue.
Right, sorry. Now, all I was going to say was, in answer to really, or to what June said, is that I think this business, the business of ageing and what's happening with ageing and the age-friendly agenda is about all of us. And it's not just about certain scrutiny committees, it's about all of us, and we all need to own it. One way that I think we can own it is to make sure that we all ask through our ward coordination meetings about the age-friendly Manchester agenda and what's happening within our own wards, and try and find out that way. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. It's just my thing's going a bit wobbly. Right. The other thing I wanted to say very quickly in answer to Rebecca's question, yes, Philip, you were right. It was a Resolution Foundation who did that report. And finally, I'd just like to say I'm so pleased that this report has come today, because as I said at the beginning, we're getting there. We're finally getting there after so very many years of working on this agenda. But one thing that's really important, and I know Mary wanted to come in on it, and I'm sorry, Mary, it looks like they've given me the last word. It's very, very important. The way we speak about ageing affects older people. Elaine said it when she talked about the equalities issue and the stigmatisation of older people. Language is really important, and I apologise, Jade, you maybe didn't know, but when we portray older people as frail and vulnerable and talk about the elderly as one big group without recognising that all of us are individuals, then we're doing a real disservice to all of the older people in the city. So I ask everybody to just go away with that message and spread it, please, and try and combat some of that ageist attitude and ageist language, because that is a real barrier to us making progress with the work that we're bringing to you today.
Thanks,
Okay.
Sue. I've just got Councillor Andrews. Who's got a question?
Okay, thank you, Chair. And it's not specifically related to the People's Republic of Worthingshire, but recommendation 3 talks about establishing an age-friendly executive. Do I take it as read that that will then come from the age-friendly board? Thank you, Chair.
Is there a straight answer, simple answer to that?
Yeah, the executive will be made up of senior officers across Manchester. So Bernie Enright, the Director of Adult Social Care, will chair that, and we're looking at pulling a group of people across MLCO and HCC in the city to help drive at a kind of open door level in the system in Manchester to help the board deliver this agenda. So they'll be there to support the board. I think Elaine and Mary will form part of the executive as well, really. So we've got that voice of all the people at the heart of everything that we do.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to draw us to a close on that because we are over the hour. It's been a really interesting discussion. I think it's just, in terms of what we're about to do, we are noting the report, we've done that, and as I mentioned, we can't approve the recommendations, but we can certainly support them. And unless I see any dissent.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. When we're saying we're supporting it, can we actually turn around and say that we're unanimously supporting it, so that it gives it a stronger emphasis for the executive, Chair?
I think that's a fair comment, and I hope, Rachel, can you make sure that the strength of feeling from the committee that we are very much behind these recommendations, welcome this report and recommend it very highly to the executive when they next meet and consider this. I think it's also fair to say, just as a, I mean, as an agenda, obviously it affects us all. But it is, I think, fair to say that whilst this report does make recommendations on how we can do things better and how we can do things better for more people, it is also fair to say that we're pretty good at this in Manchester, and I think we ought to just take a note of the fact that what has been built in Manchester by all the people who are represented here today and dozens, scores and hundreds of others who've been active in this movement for a long time now. We're as good as anybody at this. We want to be better, but we've won prizes. We've had reports at council where it's clear that we are leading a lot of this activity. And I know it's a challenging time, and I know it's tough for lots of people and particular groups of people. But I think sometimes when you get a report to scrutiny about, we often concentrate on what we want to do better and faster and bigger and all the rest of it. And we sometimes forget where we're starting from. And actually where we're starting from is we've got some massive challenges and they're not getting easier. And the pandemic hasn't made them any easier. But we are good at it. And we've learned a lot and we know a lot. And the trick now is to crack on and move that forward and to do it better to more people for better effect and better impact. And that's what the report's about, rather than starting saying we ought to do something about elderly people. How's that? Is that a recommendation? I mean, I can't do anything else other than march down to Richard Leese's office and nail it on his door. He's watching anyway. He says he doesn't, but he does. I know he does.
Hi, Richard.
Yeah, hi. So if Richard's watching, let's just, all of us, we thumbs up to this report and its recommendations, and let's get on with it. Yeah? Okay, thanks very much for that. Listen, I say this at the end of every item. For those of you who've got contributions to make to items further on the agenda, then please remain with us. If you have a passing interest in any of that, then you're more than welcome to stay. If you've got more things that you need to be doing, or you need to go, or you have no further interest, which is understandable, happens to us all, then we understand if you drop out and leave us. But thanks very much for joining us today, particularly thanks to Elaine and Marie for joining us, and to Philip, who I've not seen for many years, but one day we'll tell you all about what it was like to work in Hume in the 90s. And when I say all about, I mean all about. Okay, thanks very much. We're on to item 6, which is the Digital Inclusion Report. Again, we assume that you've read it. Who's leading us on this?
Chair, I'll introduce, and then Angela and got Philip and Cheryl and Neil on as well. They can follow up. In terms of the digital inclusion, this has been a priority for the city for over 20 years, and we've been on a journey around digital inclusion. And of course, our libraries have been at the forefront of providing internet access and digital access for a long period of time. What the pandemic has done has really brought to light the disparities in terms of digital inclusion, digital poverty, and the gap in terms of skills, and particularly around the older population in our city and the issues surrounding that. And what this report outlines is a number of initiatives and schemes that we've been able to put together at very short notice during this pandemic in order to be able to support people get the equipment, access to the internet, and also the support that they need to be able to upskill themselves to be able to access digitally services during this period of time. All the officers on the call will be able to talk to you about more in detail about some of those schemes and activities. The report also sets out our strategy for the future. And I think this is a very important area of work for us, particularly given the issue that we all know we've come across in our wards in the city, where people, particularly during this period of time, when people have had to access services more and more online and haven't been able to do so because of the lack of equipment or because of the lack of access to the internet. And of course, we've had libraries closed during lockdowns and other facilities closed during lockdown that do provide that access. And then the skills agenda in Manchester, adult education are central and key to supporting our residents and making sure that they are able to get the skills that they need to be able to fully participate and be included digitally during this period, and of course in the long term as well. So I'm going to hand over to Angela and Philip and Cheryl to talk to you a little bit more about the schemes in more detail.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. I'm afraid it's a bit of an irony that I'm talking about digital and I can't actually join you by video, even though I worked this morning for Equalities Scrutiny, so I'm not sure what's happened. I'm in exactly the same place with exactly the same kit, but there you go, the mysteries. I think Councillor Rahman has done a really good job providing an overview, so I'll just pick up I'll just pick up Councillor Hitchin's question earlier. So in terms of the digital exclusion in the city, in 2019 we estimated there were 27,000 Manchester residents who were digitally excluded, and they were more concentrated in our population over the age of 65, or disabled residents, and residents who spoke English as a second language, and residents on low incomes. So we have used that in terms of the scheme outlined in the paper. So there's the kind of digital access, there's data, and there's digital skills. And the City Treasurer agreed that we could use some of the local welfare provision because of the reasons Councillor Rahman has outlined. You know, we did pick up during COVID, people couldn't do basic things like supermarket shopping and were relying on food response because they didn't have kit or data or skills to be able to shop online, and our poorest residents pay more because they can't shop online. So the scheme that we got funding for, we got 100k to purchase 400 Wi-Fi enabled laptops. Were focused on the over 65s, people with a disability, people with long-term health conditions, and people on low income. And we've tracked that. There's an evaluation, and we're reaching those groups. And generally, people have used it to shop, to connect with friends, to access services, to access courses, to deal with their universal credit applications, and to apply for jobs. And there are kind of progression routes for people who want to go further. And again, Councillor Rahman has outlined what the adult education providers have done in the city, and they've really adapted to meet the needs of learners and do have a kind of a blended offer now, and are also investing in kit for their learners who can't do it. So that's kind of all I want to say. Sherelle and Philip have done the hard work on this, so they're the ones who deserve the credit, and probably can bring some of your, you know, in terms of bring it to life in terms of answers to some of your questions.
Okay, thanks. I've got a couple of I've got Rebecca.
Thanks, Chair. My question was specifically about universal credit. So we've obviously seen a sharp rise in universal credit claims. They've doubled in Greater Manchester over the next 6 months, and I guess we can anticipate that there's going to be a further rise after the furlough scheme ends. So I wondered what cross-working the digital inclusion and anyone that's involved in it is doing with teams like Revs and Bens to try and identify people that are claiming universal credit, might need help with their claims at this time, and also forward planning of people that might be at risk of becoming claimants in the future.
Okay, does somebody want to take that?
I'll start, and then I'll probably pass on to I'll pass on to Sherelle and Philip. So we do work very closely with Revs and Bens, so in terms of the kind of overarching responses we've been doing on the community helpline response, which is in the SIFREP a bit later, and on kind of digital we do, but Revs and Bens don't anymore know who's claiming universal credit because of housing benefit is included in universal credit, so they're not notified. So we don't see that as a city council anymore, and so therefore we are working closely with DWP, and I'll let Sherelle and Philip expand on that in terms of how we're connecting that one up.
I'll come in first and then pass on to Sherelle if that's all right. So one of the other initiatives we set up in May after the pandemic was a digital support telephone line. So we're working with library staff, other people within the council, Maze, and Citizens Advice and other UK online centres to give calls back to people who contact us and need the digital support. And one of the things that they need the digital support for, quite a lot of people, has been about universal credit. We pass all those calls on to Citizens Advice Manchester, so they're the ones who offer the sort of the digital support and have got the expert knowledge in universal credit support. So that's one example of how we're helping along those lines.
Just to add on to that as well, we're working quite closely with JCPs. So we're looking at how we can make sure JCPs are supported to link with their adult learning providers in their location. So, for example, we've got Mantra and Manchester Education Service offering some skills support directly to JCPs that are in their area. So we're definitely concerned about making sure we can support people with applying for benefits.
No, thanks. That's really helpful.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. I've got a few other questions. I just want to say hello to Sherelle. Hiya. I hope you're well. I've got Adele.
Thanks, Chair. I was just looking at the part of the report, so on page 50, we've got the things about support for residents with no home internet access and the kind of things that have been going on with donating laptops, donating tablets and things. And my question is really, obviously, for the people to sign up for that scheme, even if they're not digitally literate, they must be engaged with the council in some way to have been able to apply, or they must have a relative that's engaged with the council that can do it on their part. And I guess my question is really about concern for the people that we aren't picking up on that scheme because they're digitally excluded, but they're also not engaged in any other way, whether than through family or through engaging with the council through in person or on the phone services. And I was just wondering, out of the 27,000 digitally excluded people we've identified, how many of those would you say are fully excluded and in absolutely no contact with the council or any other service whatsoever, rather than just digitally excluded and unable to use the internet, which is the simplest way of getting in touch? Because I think there's a real worry that within that number, there's an amount of people that are just completely cut off, not just digitally cut off?
If I come in on that one first, if that's all right?
Yeah.
So the people who've applied for the 400 Chromebooks haven't just come in from council. At the start, most of them came in by contacting the council's emergency support line for COVID. So we're in great need through there. A lot of people came in asking about food, but it became clear they didn't have access, and that would sort of really be beneficial for them. And then also we've had a lot of referrals in from partner agencies, particularly health agencies. So it may again be people who aren't in contact with the council specifically, but the council's partners. So yes, people who are really isolated and excluded and not in touch with any agencies may not have benefited from this. And the biggest danger of digital exclusion is the fact they will become completely excluded. Friends, family, and services. So yes, I agree with you, and it's a real challenge trying to identify who those are, and indeed to sort of try and help overcome that.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that as well, I think we've noticed that by having the text number that there's been a real word of mouth around the service, and so lots of people in November have not been people that have already been sort of attached to our partners. I think one thing we've tried to do, which I think we need to do much more of, is make sure our comms is within the places, the spaces people actually go to, so corner shops and places like that. How can we make sure there are stickers and flyers that people can relate to so they can understand that we're here to support? So I think there's definitely more we can do, but we are noticing that by the text number it's much more received by residents who aren't connected to a service.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you, that's really helpful.
I've got Councillor Rawson, thankfully.
Yeah, having to use my phone because my full equipment doesn't work. I feel a little excluded myself. But anyway, here I am by the phone. I think digital exclusion is something that we have talked about for as long as I've been on this committee, and locally we've recognised this has been a very big problem on two of our major estates. As you know, this is a very diverse ward that I represent. So at the beginning of the COVID crisis, I mean, we brought this to the attention of providers in our area, the community centre, our neighbourhood team in Southway, so that we could take action as quickly as possible to try and get people online as soon as possible. And if you'd bear with me, I'd just like to highlight a couple of things that we did do, which I think may be useful for other members in response to what Adele said as well. Yes. Yeah, with the local community centre, the Ballamore Community Centre Association, they set up a system using MiFi connection instead of Wi-Fi, because you don't need a connection, you don't need an engineer to come, you don't need a contract to be set up. So these MiFi systems and tablets were purchased, and then service users through the community centre and through word of mouth were identified, and we went out and got people connected through that system. And that's been invaluable, that people have not lost contact. Families have been able to secure tablets so that their young people can continue with their education through the crisis that we've had. Following on from the experience that the community centre had, we then worked with our neighbourhood team and Southway to identify residents on the second estate, the Arrowfield estate, and used a very similar model there to connect people up. All the people that have been connected, whether it was on the Merseybank estate or the Arrowfield estate, have received telephone support through digital champions, and it's been a tremendous success. I mean, these people now are connected. They can access family and friends, they can access jobs, they can access their education, etc., etc. So I think, you know, we've been very proactive, and I'm sure that this has been replicated across the city, but within our local areas, we can do a lot to support the work that the council are doing as well, and the kind of things that we're hearing about in this report, which is very welcome. So I just want to finish by thanking the people locally that have been involved in this digital exclusion project and really made a big difference to a considerable number of households in our area. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Actually, this morning on the economy scrutiny, we heard a lot about sort of hard infrastructure going in, the other side of this coin, really. And nobody mentioned MiFi, which sounds like something that ought to have been mentioned, but I'll probably take that up with the chair of the economy scrutiny when we do our sort of feedback. Yeah, so Dave.
Yeah, if I could just, sorry, am I on? Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when the hardware, the kit was passed out as well, people were receiving a loaded SIM card because these work with SIM cards. So there was, you know, they were able to get going straight away, which I think is great. And we'll have to continue supporting with SIM cards if with loading them up if people do get into difficulties. But they've got everything there. They're online. It's a fantastic project that we've been involved in.
Great stuff. I've not got any indication of any other questions or comments. Councillor, is that a hand up, Veronica?
Yeah, I don't know how to send, I typed the sentence, but I'm not sure how to send it.
Just press your return.
Oh, easy. Thank you. It's just a quick question about the work and skills team who have commissioned some work with the MMU regarding the Chrome devices. What's expected the result will be? Will that provide, maybe because it's been such a success, some more investment in the future to carry on with similar projects? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to take that?
So I'm happy to pick that one up. So the work with MMU, the hope is exactly that we kind of want to understand what the challenges are really for us at local level in Manchester, in comparison to some of the national kind of themes that are highlighted often, but also people's learning journeys. So people's digital capabilities, how they get from one place to the next based on the support to access the services, but also the skill support. So we're hoping by working with MMU that we can give residents back a digital capability sort of learning journey. So they'll be then kind of presented with a learning journey and a profile that will say, you know, by doing this, by being digitally engaged, this is how it's taken you from A to B, this is how you've supported yourself, and this is what you've told us digital has done to change your life. And then as well as that, we've got a steering group that's connected into MMU that's linked to Liverpool University, who do a lot of national kind of data collection around digital inclusion. So we're hoping that we can work with other healthcare partners and other partners in this space to look at getting investment and lobbying for more support around inclusion. So it's exactly what we want to do, to use that data to tell good stories, to support more people to see the benefits of digital, but also to look for more investment to upscale our action.
Thanks very much. I've got a couple of other members indicating. Majid.
Thanks, Chair. We're in a COVID situation and we all know the link between poverty and health. How are we going to support groups with no access to internet after March? Also, March 21. Also, how do we continue to support residents who may have to isolate at home due to medical reasons, medical issues to develop their skills? And can we also look at partnering with broadband providers to provide low-cost internet to residents? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, 2 or 3 questions there. Who wants to?
Shall I start? And so if I go in reverse through Majid's question. So in terms of the piece around the infrastructure, whatever, that got a good airing, I would say, this morning at Economy Scrutiny in terms of the overall digital strategy. And one of the things we've done recently as a City Council is we've joined a corporate network infrastructure, and we're hoping to be able to expand. This is not the total answer, but we're hoping to be able to expand kind of free Wi-Fi, etc., on public buildings and low-cost Wi-Fi across our city, and that's definitely one of the priorities for the digital strategy overall. And there's big kind of providers involved in that as well. In terms of the offer for residents who are going to have to isolate. I think one of the things that COVID has done for all learning providers in the city, so that's from schools all the way up, I think, is people had to be quite agile, quite fast, and I think got much further in terms of their digital offer than they would have had on a business as usual. So if you talk to the college or you talk to adult education service, they can provide good quality blended offers now. So therefore you could start, you might have to isolate, and then you could continue online and you know, or offline, but access materials and resources. And that works for most learners. It works better though if you're kind of about level 2 sort of GCSE level and above. It's more challenging if you are entry level, particularly if you're an entry level ESOL learner, you don't have English or digital skills. So there are some challenges there, and it would be, I would be foolish and I wouldn't say that you can do all learning online. It's not a substitute, but you can do parts of your learning online. So that's one of the ways that that has been addressed. Sherelle, do you want to add anything on the extension piece? I think Sherelle has covered in her last question. So we were lucky to be able to extract 100 grand to kind of fund this scheme on the basis that we're hoping the evaluation will demonstrate how valuable it is, and it, you know, it will reduce costs for the City Council and other major service providers in the city. If people are able to access services online compared to face-to-face, it's a huge difference. So we're hoping to be able to make the case. It'll be a crowded space, won't it, in terms of budget, but we are hoping to be able to make that case. But certainly health colleagues are very interested because, again, you know, GP appointments are not kind of face to face much these days, and they will want to continue a good element of that, but they can't do it unless people have access to digital, you know, kit and infrastructure and skills. So there is, I suppose there is some self-interest for organisations to be able to kind of continue to support that this work, but we, you know, we're trying to firm up on those commitments through the evaluation.
Okay, thanks for those answers. I've got a couple of people. Neil, did you want to come in on this issue? Yeah, please. And then I've got Carmine next. Yeah, I mean, it was just to say that as we go forward, obviously one of the challenges we have in libraries is around physical distancing and how much access we can give people to. But hopefully as we move on, what we'll do is relaunch our digital offer and look at how libraries become digital hubs in our communities, and already working with Customer Service Centre and CAB to see how we can introduce digital technology that allows customers to use their library to have a face-to-face conversation digitally with a service agency. Thanks very much. Carmine.
Thank you, Chair. I'll put my video back on while I'm talking.
Always better to see you.
Yeah, thank you. My question is really just about the costing that's been given in the report. And the 110k, does that cover the internet access as well with the card, or is that an extra on cost as we move through this? Because obviously that's got to come from somewhere then. And as Angela's just mentioned, budgets are going to be very tight this coming year. I was just wondering how that would cascade, and would we find the funding if that's needed, extra funding?
Yeah, the 110,000 covered 400 Chromebooks, and for each of those Chromebooks, internet access for 6 months. And one of the good things that's come out of this is that over 100 of the people that we've given the Chromebooks to actually had Wi-Fi in their house, but had no device to use it. So we've taken those Wi-Fi and SIMs out, and then given those to other people who have got devices but don't have any data or any Wi-Fi. So we've actually helped over 500 people through this scheme using the 110,000. So yeah, it does cover the Chromebooks and the internet access for 6 months.
Councillor Rahman, I think you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think Councillor Grimshaw raises a very valid point around budgeting, and if you look at this report and the sums of money that we've spent in this short period of time trying to address some of those issues around digital exclusion, it's not a great deal of money in terms of the numbers of people that we've got to try and support. And we all know the imminent budget cuts that are coming over the horizon and the challenges that's going to present to us. So in order for us to be able to support those 27,000 people that we've identified as digitally excluded, the skills gaps and all the other issues that are associated with digital inclusion is going to be a huge challenge for us to be, in order for us to be able to find the resources. And what we do really need is this agenda to be supported by national government, because skills, digital inclusion, national government has the budget for that, and we need to ensure that they put the resources in to our cities so that we are able to support those 20,000, 27,000 people and more that we haven't been able to get in touch with in order for everybody to be digitally included and have the necessary skills and the equipment and the access to the internet.
Thanks for that. I'm just going to take another couple of comments, questions, and then I'll draw a close on this one because we've got one other substantive item and time's moving on. I've got Councillor Rawson, I think was indicated.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And June.
Thanks, Chair. My ward is one of the most deprived wards in the city and one of the most with digital exclusions across the city. It has all of the key indicators for poverty, not being able to access services, digital exclusion, food poverty, etc., etc. However, what I wanted to just say was, I came to a committee a couple of committees back and mentioned about the digital exclusion and how important it was for our libraries, and especially to be able for our libraries to stay open, to be able to give that digital access to those who don't have the facilities to be able to use or have the resources to have computers or to be able to use the Wi-Fi. And I just wanted to say thank you more than anything else, is that I'm aware of how many people are going in on a daily basis and a weekly basis to be able to access those vital services, to be able to access universal credit, to be able to use, to be able to access for their GP appointments and all of the other things that go with it. It may not be a full service because obviously it's not 24/7, but I just wanted to say thank you to the library staff and also for this committee for raising that 2 committees ago as well, and that it was listened to. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to draw us to a close on that because I think that's a good point, positive point to end on. Thanks everybody for the contributions. Thanks in particular to Neil and to Philip and to Sherelle for their answering the questions and the contributions they've made, and also to Angela for leading on that both this morning and this afternoon. 2 very different sides of the same coin, but I think worth discussing separately, actually. Thanks very much for those people who've joined us specifically for that item. If they want to leave, then they're more than welcome to. We won't hold that against them. If they want to stay, then they're more than welcome to. We won't hold that against them. For the rest of us, we move on to item 7, which is our standing item on the update on the COVID activity. I assume that Councillor Craig is leading us through this.
She would be if she could get herself unmuted in time. But yes, I'm still here and still no camera, so never mind.
Oh, well.
You can't see that I've put a fleece on rather than turn the heating on, so that's quite good.
We will do if the camera starts working.
I wouldn't bet on it. So I suppose what I wanted to do, obviously you've got in front of you the 15-slide SIT wrap update. I suppose I wanted just to kind of, I'll take that as read, but give kind of a quick sense as where we are, obviously as we move out of the national lockdown restrictions into Tier 3. As you will know, and it's not covered in this piece because it's picked up mostly at Health Scrutiny, the numbers continue to go in the right direction. We're under 200 cases per 100,000 for the first time since mid-to-end September, and we have a picture where the numbers in hospitals are stabilising and beginning to drop. What we have seen, obviously through the national lockdown, we re-escalated some of our services. The community helpline never went away, but we put extra support in there to make sure that people get help as they needed it. And I'm sure officers can pick up those questions. I just wanted to say it would be my intention that these services will continue, particularly in Tier 3 and particularly over the Christmas and January period. And we'll be taking the same decision that we took back in the summer, that we won't stop these services, given until we have a proper vaccination rollout. This will remain with us early winter. So I guess it's just about saying that we're in a period of flux at the moment. Support is still there for people that need it. We're still monitoring in terms of the impact, and particularly some of the issues that were mentioned earlier on in the agenda, as we enter what will be a very difficult economic phase for the city in terms of poverty, joblessness, particularly at a difficult time of year. And what you'll see from next month will be a slightly shorter report that will probably only be sort of a couple of slides, but we'll hopefully move then to discussing some of the individual items in a bit more detail at the request of the committee. So it's just to flag to you that we're going to change the way we report, but can give more substantive detail if needed.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for that, Bev. I've got an indication from Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. On the line related to domestic violence and abuse, it says that Manchester Women's Aid will continue to support high-risk referrals from MARAC until the 31st of March 2021. What's going to happen after that?
Do you want to respond to that, Bev? I haven't got any other questions. Oh, yes, yes, I have. Go on, but
yep.
Take that.
Is Councillor Murphy still with us?
I can pick up, Bev, if you want to start.
Yep, that would be great. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that question. This relates, I think maybe it's the way that's expressed. So, because there has been a very strong group of community and voluntary organisations working with the City Council's domestic abuse and violence team during this period, and like a lot of other services, they had to adapt and change what they were doing during COVID, and some organisations were able to move online and some weren't, and there was additional resource put where it was needed. So that's additional resource from Women's Aid to MARAC over this period, while it's kind of operating in the sort of response mode, but with a view to it being stepped back to business as usual, or more business as usual, business in the new usual in March. But that's reviewed regularly, and they do respond in a fairly agile way. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it relates to as well the fact that there's been a rise, there's been some rise in numbers overall, but the rise has, there's been a more significant rise in complex cases during the COVID period, which has kind of continued.
Thank you very much. I've got indication from Councillor Dar.
Thanks, Chair. How will people be able to access COVID-19 winter grants if they have no digital access? And my other point is, how are we supporting people either accessing homeless support, refugee support over Christmas in terms of welfare assistance? Thanks.
You want to take those questions?
I can start on those again, and Councillor Craig will want to come in. So in terms of the COVID winter grant, that's probably free school meals by any other way. So that was the kind of government response to the kind of campaigning that has been done. So there was a report going to Executive, and that's primarily going to go to families whose children are eligible for free school meals. And we're going to do it through a voucher system. So it's out to procurement at the moment to supermarkets to see what additional discounts and other things they can provide on the back of that. So both in terms of the voucher value, but also what families do to shop. And for the reasons in my response to Councillor Moore's question, so schools themselves have access to the families who are eligible for free school meals. They can get the system, they can do the checks, so they are best placed to be able to get those out to the children and families in that route. So that's where most of it will go. There will be some additional money focused on care leavers and other kind of vulnerable groups in the city. There will be some of it go to the food response, to cover the food response over Christmas, which goes to our 40 community partnership organisations. And that food response is gearing up to be able to respond on an emergency basis over Christmas. So there will be, there will be some response there across those organisations for kind of people in the city who need that response over the Christmas period.
Okay, thanks. I've got Jade.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the test and trace support payment scheme. It says that consideration is being given to contacting the DWP to request an increase, which is actually provided within the scheme, but obviously there's no confidence that they're going to be agreeable to that increase. Just wondered what the reasons were, if it was within the scheme anyway that we were permitted to have that extra money for the discretionary budget. Why are the DWP not willing to grant that to us? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Who wants to take that?
I can. The general point around the test and trace is actually demand is so the money was allocated on a sort of local authority basis, but there was some differentiation in how it was allocated, but it wasn't huge in terms of what a city might get and what say a rural area might get, but rates of COVID were very different. So the amount that we got didn't reflect the demand in the city or the need to get people to test and trace. So our request is based on the demand to match that budget. I don't know where it's up to with the DWP, but I can check with colleagues in revenues and benefits and come back to you on that one.
I would just add into that there is a wider political point as to why they wouldn't. So we've been very clear that what we've been able to do with the discretionary component in some ways is able to redress some of the weaknesses of the national scheme. And we've been quite robust, both kind of in Manchester, across GM and through core cities, that actually the self-isolation payment isn't sufficient, neither in terms of finances provided, nor in terms of the strict and stringent rules and guidelines that the government assigned to it. So that forms the basis of us writing to government.
Thanks, Bev. I've got Councillor Rawson.
Yeah, thank you. I know that the date on the front of this is the 20th of November. So I just was wondering really if you could give us any more update on what progress is being made on finding satisfactory accommodation for homeless people who might test positive. It mentions that there's a bit of a struggle on there. So if you've made any progress on that since the report was written.
Is that Bev?
Ruffo, do you want to pick that one up? You
Sorry.
still with us?
Sorry, I think he's gone.
We can get more of an update on that.
Oh, no, he's still here. Sorry.
He's still here. Super.
Well, he's still on the screen. It's uncharacteristically unlike Councillor Rahman to be silent. We shall just revel in that moment.
If for some reason he's unable to come in, I'll make sure that we go away and get some additional information so that we can circulate it.
If we found a way of muting him, I think that's a skill we should share. No, he's definitely, we can't hear him. Thanks, Bev. Thanks for that offer. I think you'll probably if you can take that offline with Dave, that would be good. Veronica.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question regarding the vaccine, and I know that the homeless people have been considered by some charities to be placed as top priority. I think this 6th in line, I know it's early days yet, but do we have any information on that situation, please?
Bev, I think that's going to have to be you, assuming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if I was to give you an honest answer in a public domain, Councillor Kirkpatrick, I think it's too early to say in terms of specific timelines. If I'm to be realistic, when the vaccine arrives in Manchester, and it is yet to arrive in Manchester, it has been made explicitly clear to us that the priority groups to begin with, so for the Pfizer vaccine, the one that has to be in the -80 fridges, for that vaccine, that is for frontline health and care workers in hospitals and care home residents and care home staff. If Pfizer can find a medically safe way to have it transported to the care homes. Following that, it will be people who are over 80 within the community. At this moment in time, the limited supply of vaccine means there will be no local discretion. I think we've been making it very clear that once we get past the high vulnerability groups, such as the over 80s, and into kind of the over 50s and people with long-term conditions, our homeless and rough sleeping populations would be part of that. I'll be honest though, I think kind of the experts are saying that the Pfizer vaccine probably wouldn't be the best one for them. Theoretically, maybe one of the AstraZeneca ones or something that doesn't need to be transported as complicated. So we're looking at it, but I think like anything to do with the vaccine, it's very, very early days.
Thank you. I've not got any further indications on this, and it is a standing item, and I know that circumstances change as we go along. Was there anybody else? Is there anybody else who wants to put the hand up who I've missed? No. Okay. Well, I'll thank you for that. Sorry, Carmine.
Thank you, Chair. I did raise my hand and do it properly, but you must have missed it. Sorry. It's just about the COVID, although it's the COVID cure, the vaccine. So although it's welcome, most people I'm speaking to in and around my area, I don't know if other members are experiencing this, they're sort of welcoming it, but with an air of caution really about the long-term effects. And I just wondered if we know any further or what we'd be doing if people don't want to take it because they're really concerned about it. I mean, I spoke to several people yesterday and they were saying, yeah, it sounds great, but what are the long-term effects? That was the most prevalent thing on the mind. It wasn't taking the vaccine. It was sort of, I'm not sure I want to take it because of the long-term effects, which we know, everyone's saying we've no outcome now, but I wonder if how we're going to deal with that if people just refuse to take the vaccine.
So I think this touches on probably the biggest challenge that we have in Manchester and actually across the country in the next 6 to 12 months. I think there are a range of people out there, from the very dangerous anti-vaxxers that we've seen that share and spread misinformation and really put people's lives at risk by sharing awful conspiracy theories, to people who might have concerns, and there will have to be both a local and a national comms campaign that treats this really seriously and quite sensitively with people. So there will be some specifics around each of the specific vaccines. So as I said, the Pfizer vaccine is different to the AstraZeneca vaccine. They've got different bits in it that make it up. So for example, all of the stuff that's been put forward so far we know is halal, so we can say that very clearly. And each of them will have their own studies that will be shared. But I think you'll see, particularly after Christmas, local members will have a really, really important role in their communities in being able to share information that we've done off the back of listening to Manchester people. So we're setting up and have set up a range of community sounding boards, not just focus groups, but very diverse across the city, where we're able to capture what some of people's concerns are, but also get the key messages of relevance around some of that. and also who gives that trusted message. You know, so it's all well and good me making a video talking about a vaccine when I'm not a scientist and I don't really know much about how it's made. But having trusted local people giving their views, I think will be really keen in how we get some of that information out there as well. So after Christmas, there'll be a much more detailed plan around a lot of the work that's happened up until then, and then a rollout plan over the coming months. Because I think realistically, you know, we're not talking about mass vaccination in the next couple of weeks or months even. You know, that over 50s that I'm talking about, we're probably not talking about until the end of February, March time. So we need to make sure that this is absolutely right. We're using the correct information in the right places from trusted sources. There'll be a website in Manchester that we could direct people to. There'll be leaflets, there'll be stuff for community boards. And we really need to be on the front foot to make sure that people have access to the right information in ways that they understand and they trust.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, I think that's an important topic that we're all going to face over the next few months. I've got no further indications of questions, so I'm going to draw that item to a close. We are on item 8, which is the work plan. We are scheduled one further meeting. Well, we've got details of one further scheduled meeting, which is on the 14th of January. I assume we will still be meeting under these conditions. I've not any realistic expectation of otherwise. Just to say that in the substantive item will be the budget proposals, so we'll be discussing that again, and obviously we'll have the update on COVID, but we've also, if you note in the report, the items to be scheduled, we are bringing forward a Parks Investment Programme report for you early on in the year, so we can look forward to spring in our parks. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, it's just on the question of the work programme. Now, I know January is going to be taken up with the budget, so and COVID, so it's probably not appropriate to actually be trying to slip things into the agenda for that day. But the Equalities update and the Parks programme, will that be taken in February as a potential item, or are we going to have to leave February light in case stuff comes out of the January meeting and any decisions the executive make? I'm just curious as to when the Parks one is actually going to be on the agenda, because if we're going to have a debate,
going to be on the agenda. It's going to be on the agenda in January.
In January.
Yeah, yeah. We brought that one forward to January.
Okay, thank you.
The Equalities update will probably go on the February agenda, but you're quite right. February can be a tricky month.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it needs to be a light one in February.
It does. We need to. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the Parks programme, the report will come to the January.
All right. Thank you very much.
Scrutiny. And I think apart from that, there was just one thing that the item on when we discussed the minutes, it was probably remiss of me to say that one of the things that was asked for, I think Councillor Rawson in particular, asked for information about the review of symbols across the city. And my understanding is, well, I know for a fact that information about that and the schedule and progress so far was circulated in between meetings. So you should have had that. If you've not had that update from, I think came from Dave Carty actually, or it might have come from Councillor Rahman. But one way or another, you got an update. If you haven't had that, then let me know and I'll sort that out. I've got a quick question.
I was going to say, could you get that update resent to everybody, because our IT system has been a bit hickledy, and I know I haven't had that update.
Right, okay. I'll ask if Rachel can recirculate that. I think to describe our IT system as higgledy-piggledy is possibly the understatement of 2020.
It's been a
I'm not going into it because I keep getting into trouble every time I kick off about it. So
sorry, Chair, you're breaking up.
Okay. Don't even joke about it. It's beyond joking about. I know there's a question there from Councillor Dar. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
sounds better now.
I've got a quick question there from Councillor Dar. I assume that will form part of the about the funding of the voluntary community sector. I assume that will form part of the budget discussions in that come to the January meeting. There is a policy forum on that for those of you who attend those things. There is a policy forum on that, I think, before Christmas as well on that particular issue. So you may want to find out about that. Apart from that, it's bang on 4 o'clock. I don't know how we do that, but we do. And it's been an interesting meeting, and all that remains for me to do is to tell everybody to stay safe and look after yourselves and have as good a Christmas and holiday break as anyone could have under the rather bizarre circumstances. I'd like to see you, as many of you as possible, down a pub, but sadly, that may have to wait. Thanks very much, and thanks to everyone for their contributions. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Back at you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.